So hopefully this is not too loud. Is it okay? So as Catherine mentioned, we would come down and visit on the weekends and sit at the table in the farmhouse with my mom, and she'd like, what's going on in AI? And so this is as a result of her persistence and curiosity that we're all here. And so we'll talk about AI. This is the talk I've given, started in about almost 10 years ago, giving this talk at Brown. And the first time I gave it, everybody fell asleep. They don't fall asleep anymore because it's in the newspapers every day. So we'll talk a little bit about that. As Catherine alluded to, I've been a venture capitalist for 30 years. They say if you've done something for 10,000 hours, you're an expert. And so I've been pitched by entrepreneurs for well over 10,000 hours. So I'm an expert at getting pitched, for whatever that's worth. Watch the cord. And as I said, I've been giving this talk, and as a firm, we've been investing in AI for close to a dozen years. We called it different things at different times, machine learning and data science. And then all of a sudden, in the last couple of years, a tremendous amount has changed. And so we'll talk about that. But before we do, just a couple of indications of everything that's changed. So this is AI mentions on earnings calls by the S&P 500. So there's 500 companies. In Q1 of this year, 211 of them said something about AI. So everybody's talking about AI. It has a real impact across the business community. For those of you that like the stock market, you've probably heard of a company called NVIDIA. Now, I think the most valuable publicly traded company, and you can see over the last 5 years, a complete tear. They're the underlying driver of a lot of the computing power that powers AI, and that's driven a lot of their growth. This is the world I play in, which is private investment. And as you can see, 10 years ago when we first started investing in this, relatively small. Today, all venture capital seems to be flowing into AI companies. And so we'll talk a little bit about why and what's going on. And so to go backwards, and all the images, by the way, in this presentation are generated by AI. And so that's one of the cool things. And so you can just type. This one was a picture of a F-150 pickup on the beach. And that's what you get. So it's kind of fun in that regard. And so AI as a concept has been around for a long time. And so first posited in 1950, Alan Turing, he had this concept of the Turing test. Like when the machines are able to be interacting with humans in a way that are indistinguishable from humans, that's artificial intelligence. There were some pioneers at Stanford and MIT who talked about some of the early concepts, but basically nothing came of it. And then there's a concept called Moore's Law, which suggests that computing power doubles in power every 2 years. It's called Moore's Law. And as you'll see, one of the big unlocks for AI suddenly working was that the computing power continued to double and double and double. And you do that for a long time, you get a lot of power. And that enabled some of this revolution. Another big enabler was obviously the World Wide Web. I started investing in 94, right when we were sort of first using our internet browsers, and suddenly you had, 1 billion people on the internet and connected and talking and communicating and creating all this knowledge. And so that was a big step in the journey, if you will, in AI. And then in 2009, there's a professor at Stanford named Andrew Ng who had this concept that we could run what's called deep learning algorithms on GPUs. GPUs are the little chips that power graphics in your computer, and so they were used for computer gaming and things like that. And he's like, hey, they're really good at making computations, and AI systems need to make a lot of computations, and so that was a big unlock. And so you maybe have heard of things like IBM Watson. They had an idea that AI could be used to play games. It won Jeopardy. It's a world chess champion. Amazon launched something called Alexa, so suddenly we're talking to computers. And so that was very important. Google launched something called AlphaGo, which was really good at playing Go. It beat the world's best player in Go, thought to be the hardest game because it has so many different variations, but suddenly the computers were not only beating humans at chess, they were beating them at Go. And then the other big innovation that came from Google is they wrote a paper in 2017 that's called the Transformer paper. It was called Attention's All You Need, and it was this technique to manipulate text, to understand text in a way that you could generate more text. And I'll come back to how that works. But that was a huge unlock. And they published the paper, and then they kind of did nothing with it. But this little company called OpenAI took a lot of those concepts and launched a general purpose transformer model, GPT. And that was sort of okay. I used it, and it could generate human sentences, but they weren't very good. And then suddenly in 2002, in November, there was this huge explosion. OpenAI launched this product called ChatGPT, which you've probably heard of. And ChatGPT, in the span of days, suddenly was being used by 100 million people. So it completely took off. The fastest product ever have 100 million people using it. Today, about 800 million people use ChatGPT every day. And so it's become this massive explosion that has created a lot of the interest. And suddenly AI is on the front page. And so since then, there's been continued advancements, as you might imagine. If you read, you've probably heard something about a product called DeepSeek, which was quote unquote a Chinese model. And so this is a model that came out of China earlier this year. It was equivalent in performance to a lot of the US models. And so suddenly AI has become a national security issue because, are we competing with the Chinese, and how does that work? And if they're able to develop this amazing technology that we thought we had a corner hold on here in the US, is that a potential risk? And so today what you see is AI is being used really in many, many different ways. There's language models, which is what the chat systems are. You type and it types back to you. You can talk to it and it'll talk back to you, but all sort of English language or language based. There's a whole bunch of AI systems that are image and video based, and so I showed a couple, one of the pictures. I'll show another one in a second. AI can generate amazing video suddenly. And then there's all sorts of tools and products that people are using to bring these systems to life. And so our point of view is that we're on the cusp of this revolution, and so the nature of work and society and creativity is completely going to transform in the next 10 years. And so this is a major sea change, step function change in society, and it's really going to have implications across all of society. And I'll try to touch on some of those. And so one of the questions is, with the concept and history that started in the 1950s, why now? Why is this suddenly possible? And the way AI systems work is that they need a tremendous amount of data. And so suddenly, if you have 6 billion people around the world have a mobile phone, and they're creating content, and they're generating images and generating text, and so you have this massive amount of connected people who generate huge amounts of data, and then suddenly you have computing power. This is sort of a measure of $1 of computing power, up 10x almost in the last 10 years. And so you have all this data, all this computing power, and then these fancy models that Google developed and Andrew Ng first talked about, and all these pieces suddenly came together, and you have this unique moment in time where it's suddenly possible to create these systems that people have thought about and dreamed about, and actually have them work. And so what can you do with those? Hold on one sec. So I'll talk about a couple of things. So first, AI is smarter than your average human. This example, you can see 2019, not so smart. 2023 surpasses the average human on general understanding. If you look at graduate level understanding, again, started out not terribly smart, suddenly has passed graduate level exams. So the rate of change is really quite exceptional in terms of the capabilities of these systems. Last year when I gave this presentation, AI had just won a silver medal at the International Math Olympiad, which is the top math students in the entire world. And very, very few passed that. This year it won a gold medal. So it's better than all the best mathematicians in the world. Importantly, one of the things that's happening is, the second part didn't work. It's getting really good at software development, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more. But a couple of years ago, AI was pretty bad at software development. Today, it's better than your average developer, and so there's an implication in terms of sort of entry-level software development jobs, and whether those are going to be available anymore. But what you're seeing and what we see across our companies is, many of our companies, one of my founders said, I've got a team of 5 software engineers, and 10 interns. And I'm like, oh, what are the interns' names? And they're like, oh, AI. And so you're seeing these really small teams get really good and really fast at developing software, leveraging AI. And this has probably been the area that's changed the most over the last year. And you may have heard of a term I'll call it vibe coding. So you can go onto a AI-powered software development system and just type in, hey, build me an application to manage the South Ferry Church scheduling of the lecture series for next year. And you'll have the application in 5 minutes. And so it's pretty amazing on that front. On more esoteric sides, AI's discovered all the possible proteins in the world. And so that happened in 2022. I mentioned it's really good at generating images. The other big change in the last year is that AI has gotten really good at video. I don't know if this one's going to work. So that was entirely AI. No actors. No, you just typed in a script saying, I want an old man by the sea, and that's what you get. And that, again, a year ago would have been sort of janky and choppy and not very good. And a year later, it's it's really high quality. So that's kind of fun. Oops. And one of the things that we think a lot about is that that we may just be scratching the surface. Technology waves, when they move, they tend to move really, really fast and up into the right. And so Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt wrote a book, and they said, that if we could have a million-fold increase in capabilities in the next 10 to 15 years, or 15 to 20 years, and so million-fold from those examples I gave, which are already pretty cool. Is sort of hard to wrap your arms around, and so you'll hear people talking about that as sort of artificial general intelligence or super intelligence, and we clearly seem to be on a pathway to get to that. I'm going to skip this one. And so what's happening with these systems? And so the text ones are probably easiest to understand, and so the way they work is they're really good at predicting the next word. And so what is the likelihood? What is the likelihood of? And so each time it's basically thinking about what would be the most likely next word. And so in that regard, they seem you'll hear people will talk to them like, oh, they're just a statistical parrot. They're just pulling back words and they don't really understand. But as you dig into it and you get really good at understanding all the words that have ever been written by humans that are available on the internet, and you build a model on that, by understanding the language and the structure of language, you actually get really good at understanding. And so that's the sort of the big change, again, is that they're not just predicting, the systems are actually starting to become really smart. I did this for my dad. So he wrote a book. So this is the cover of his book. I don't know, I think it was 60,000 words. So I gave it to AI, all 60,000 words. And I said, hey, what does Mike Hazard think are the keys to success as an investment manager? This took literally 5 seconds. And so a book that he wrote that probably took 5 years. But here are his, 7 ways to be a successful investment manager, all of which are pretty good. Adaptability is probably the most important one in today's world, and because there's a lot of change going on. But that's just a really simple example of you can give very large amounts of information. You can ask for summaries. You can ask for insights. You can lead to all sorts of interesting things. Another big change in the last year is that these AI systems now do something called reasoning. And so they can actually go do jobs for you. And so I can, on a regular basis, I'll be at work and I'll say, hey, AI, go research this topic. And it'll go search websites and look things up and run calculations and bring it all back in a report. And this would be a report my analyst could do over the span of a week. It'll, again, do in about 10 minutes. A measure of luck. Yes, we definitely need a measure of luck. And so what are people using AI for? And so there's sort of three big categories. So the first category is I have an existing product, and I want to use AI to make that product better. So adding new features to products. The second is to support humans, make humans better, faster, more efficient at doing things. So my research example that I just gave, that would be me leveraging AI to become a better investor, to be more thoughtful about what I'm learning about and be able to do so more quickly. And then the third big category is automation. And so building autonomous systems that are either software systems or physical systems that do jobs on behalf of humans. So as an example, there's, Adobe's a big public company. They make all the products that you use to manipulate photos and images. They added a capability where within Photoshop, their big flagship product, you can generate new scenes or new features or new images in those photos. So that makes that a better product as a result of AI. Supporting humans, I talked about AI is really good at software development. One of the products is called GitHub Copilot. There's actually better ones, Cursor and Windsurf and others. And they're really good at software development. And so if you're a software developer and it makes you 10 times faster at the routine parts of your job, you're maybe feeling more productive. You may feel more efficient. You may feel in the flow. And so the really good software developers have taken to these quite quickly. On the automation side, this is a company that recently filed to go public. They automated their entire customer service operation. And AI now performs the equivalent of 700 of their full-time agents, which obviously has implications. And then there's another big aspect of automating humans, which is a more nascent field, but there's this concept that AI has historically lived on the internet, if you will, in the cloud. But if you marry that with physical systems, with robots and autonomous vehicles, suddenly you're going to unlock a whole nother level of capabilities. And so the AI can not only actually do things, they can actually do things in the real world. And so Donna and I joke that when we get older, our humanoid robots are going to take care of us, which I don't think that's actually that far away. That's probably 5 to 10 years away that we'll have humanoid robotics running around in the world doing things, able to autonomously navigate through the world and help in warehouses or help in factories or whatnot. And so obviously that makes people nervous. This is an old book, but from my friend Andrew Yang, who ran for president basically on the principle that AI was going to automate all these jobs, and that was going to be very hard. Stephen Hawking says we're at the most dangerous moment in human history as we potentially automate all these jobs. And this is a chart from McKinsey, I think, or Goldman Sachs, looking at the percentage of automation that could happen. And you look at some of these categories in legal and architecture and engineering and sciences, my job in business and finance, very significant levels of automation. And so historically, people have thought about automation as automating, a little bit more blue collar work. This is going to be automating white collar work. And so the nature of the job, if you will, is going to change a lot. And so there was, in the New York Times a couple months ago, there was 2 competing articles. It was like, one, we're going to lose all these jobs, all the entry-level jobs are gone. The other article was 22 new jobs that will be created by AI. And so how do you feel about that? Is whether you view AI as being like a massive threat, or do you view AI as being a massive opportunity? And so the jury is obviously still out, but that's something we're going to have to navigate over the course of the next decade. And I alluded to this a little bit. President Trump came out with America's AI Action Plan. I think in direct, really reaction to, quote unquote, the Chinese models getting really good. And so, the point of view that's expressed in this, there's really 2 parts that are interesting. One is that leadership in AI is a matter of national security, the first time anyone said that. And then second is that it's actually a tool for promoting democracy around the world. And so as a result, it's imperative that the US feel like that they have a leadership position in AI if it's going to be exported around the world, which is coming from a protectionist president is obviously saying something. And so it's actually a reasonably well thought out, somewhat vague plan, but recognizes that this is probably one of the most important, not only sort of technology matters, but political matters in the coming decade. So switching to my world, this is investing in AI, and so you can see the sort of breadth of areas in which AI companies are being formed in healthcare and supply chain and life sciences and finance, robots that I alluded to, people that are helping solve cybersecurity issues and bring forward new platforms for customer service and the like. And so everywhere across the landscape, there seem to be new companies being formed that are going to leverage AI to create new businesses and hopefully move things forward. And all of that rests on top of what's called AI infrastructure, which are the systems used to build all those new capabilities. We also track the public markets. Flybridge has something called the AI Index, which is an unopinionated version of the companies that are sort of participating in the AI boom, with some of them maybe being at risk in the AI boom. And that index, from a stock perspective, has outperformed the S&P and the NASDAQ over the last 4 or 5 years. And it's companies that are largely here and building all these capabilities, the data centers and the power grid upgrades that are needed to run AI, along with the core, what they call foundational models, the models that sort of do all the work. And then some of the companies that are building applications. Palantir has probably been the best performing stock in the public markets for the last couple of years, or one of the best performing. And so you're starting to see these companies grow and succeed in the marketplace as a result of their investment in AI. And so it really is going everywhere. And as I alluded to, there's different opinions on this. I think this number is coming in, but there's this concept of artificial general intelligence, which is the machines are smarter than us across all categories of human capabilities and knowledge. And if they are, there's also a belief that once they get to that point, that they will be good at helping themselves get smarter. And so in 5 years is probably I think the most optimistic people think this could happen in 27. I think that's probably a little optimistic, but in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years, the AI systems will get good enough that they are really better than humans on all dimensions. And so what does that mean? These are the big questions that people are debating. And so the simplistically, like, should I be really nervous? And so the no category, which I tend to subscribe a little bit more to the no category, but it is simplistically that humans are the only species to ever use tools to make ourselves smarter. And so AI is yet another tool that we're going to use to make ourselves smarter, to make ourselves more successful, to feed more people, to solve diseases, and that future looks pretty bright. The more negative side on should superintelligence make me nervous is that there's sort of a number of risks. One is sort of abuse. So imagine the AI is really good at designing novel biological compounds. In the hands of the wrong person, that could be a novel biological toxin that could be distributed. So misuse is a big area people are worried about. Alignment's another area that people worry about. Are the machines going to always have our best interests at heart? So that makes people nervous. That's a little bit sort of the Terminator scenario, either maliciously or just by accident. And then there's, I think, a more near-term real area to be concerned about is really twofold. One is sort of the concept of what's real is blurring. And so you could see that video I shared, and that seemed pretty real. And so if you're going to spread misinformation, suddenly your ability to do that is much greater. And then the societal impact of sort of upheaval of segments of the economy from a job perspective, how fast do new things come online with AI relative to how quickly maybe older jobs are automated. And so I think the way we navigate through that will be super important. And so on this alignment question, one of the things, how do you align a system with human interests? And that gets into what are humans interested in? And so this quickly veers into the realm of philosophical. And so part of the reason that people are nervous about alignment is it's really hard to capture what do we care about as humans, and does that change country to country? And so part of the reason why we're maybe interested in AI as it relates to the promotion of democracy. So if you believe in free speech, your AI should really, be set up to believe in free speech. If you're in China, maybe your AI is not going to care quite so much about free speech. And so how you think about building these systems to align with humans' goals, even if you have the technical capabilities to do that, is something that makes people nervous. And in the years I've been giving this, and that yes, no, and my nervous speech. As competition intensifies and it becomes a national area of national interest, the likelihood that people are going to maybe go faster and be less concerned with some of these sort of fundamental safety and risk considerations, the safety and risk tends to take a backseat in the interest of speed and competition and quote unquote winning. And so that's something that I think we need to continue to wrestle with as we push forward. So that was the bulk of the slides. So hopefully everybody's still awake. It's like 900 degrees in here, so if everyone wants to go, it's okay. But the Q&A part of this is always the most fun for me, and so if there's any questions on your mind or things you're thinking about, all right. Yeah, Yuval Harari. Right. Right. I can repeat it, but do I believe it or? Yeah, so the question is, there's a book, I forget what it's called. It's by the guy who wrote Sapiens, that basically says that Homo sapiens are a stepping stone towards a new species. That'll be some AI, maybe human combined species, and is that a possibility? And the short answer is probably over time, yes. The lines of, you can now, people are probably have heard about a company called Neuralink, where you can implant a chip in your brain and you can use it to control computers. There's a young technologist who said, I'm waiting to have children so I can implant Neuralinks into their brain and they'll be able to learn much more quickly. That was a pretty extreme stance. He runs all of AI at Facebook right now. So if that makes you a little nervous, it should. And so I think the line, human augmentation, leveraging AI to be smarter, does that cross a line where suddenly we are less human? I don't know. Yeah, I'm probably yeah. Right. Right now it is, and right now there's significant physical constraints to the success of AI systems. So they're very power hungry, and so they need a lot of chips, and so for the foreseeable future they're going to remain power hungry and they're going to remain needing a lot of chips. At some point in time the chips will get faster and faster and faster, and power will become more readily available, and there'll be an innovation in solar that will suddenly make solar wildly more efficient, and we'll solve the energy crisis that way, or we'll have an unlock in terms of nuclear energy that will work. And so I think the AI systems will get better, will get faster, will get constrained by some of the physical constraints. And then whether they're running on microchips, at some point in time, could they run on quantum computers, which are a little bit more biological? Probably. That's probably 30 years out. But these are the questions of the day that there aren't great answers for. Yeah, the question is, what's the projections for military and warfare? I spend relatively less time in that field. I think you can see in Ukraine sort of all the ramifications of modern warfare. So the drones are all autonomous and can identify targets in the field. The anti-drone technology is all powered by AI. Palantir, which is a big AI company, is integrating all the information on behalf of the Ukrainians to help them compete. And so I think you're starting to see the spread of certainly computer vision systems and autonomous decision-making systems into the field of the military. And again, historically there's been this bright shining line that we're not going to let machines go kill humans, but we're awfully close to that line. And again, I think in a conflict like Ukraine, they probably have crossed it. So I don't have a great answer for like what are the implications, but there are definitely big implications there. The way back? Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. That one I have thought a lot about. So if the question is sort of, you think about a lot of the modern economies are declining in population, and you'll hear terms like the demographic cliff, Japan being the first company to sort of fall off the demographic cliff, China being the one that's going to follow soon thereafter, where their population will go from 1 billion or something like that to 600 million, and that's potentially catastrophic economically. And part of the reason why the physical AI systems are so important is it's a means to actually solve the demographic cliff. And that if you see robotic systems come along and they drive a level of productivity, whether it's in a factory setting or a healthcare setting, you can navigate that. And so part of the reason why it's a national security interest is if you're in a country that is facing a potential demographic cliff, your need to invest in enabling these technologies is extremely high, because that's how you continue growth and productivity and well-being society, even if your population's half the size it would be today. Right. So this is ultimately that question on that last slide. Like we are trying to build AI systems that are acting in accordance with human morals, and all the systems have safety mechanisms to ensure they act in alignment with human interests, and they don't enable people to misuse the systems or allow the systems to be misaligned. And so we're trying to do all that. And so when you hear people get nervous, though, again, in this competition is Grok, which is the X.AI AI system from Elon Musk. Are they pushing the envelope on the safety perspective? They 100% are. And so they are moving faster as a result of that, which is good for them competitively, bad from a safety, morality, alignment perspective. And so the big fear is in this competitive intensity, where the prize is sort of, again, artificial superintelligence. That's a pretty big prize. Are people going to cut corners, and in cutting corners, do we make a mistake? That's where the systems will be less moral. And so I think I think as a society, we're trying to walk this fine line of wanting to move very quickly, because I think if I didn't have a good slide on this, but if you think about the implications like massive change to potentially ability to treat human disease, massive change to ability to improve yields in agriculture, massive change in the robotics, the demographic cliff question that we were just talking about. Like there could be huge benefits to AI, and so we want to realize those benefits, but you don't want to realize them at the expense of systems that somehow work against our interests or somehow enable a bunch of bad people to do really bad things. And so that's the balancing act that at a high level is being pursued. And I think on different days, it seems like we're doing better or worse on that. Yeah, the interesting thing, there's lots of trade secrets more than there are patents. So the big enabler, that whole LLM slide, that predicting the next word, that came from Google's paper. They wrote the paper, they published it, they shared the code with the entire world, which I think maybe if they could rewind the clock, they might change their perspective on that, but that's what created OpenAI. That's what created all the companies that pursued it. So there's a lot of open research and sharing, but then underneath the covers, there's a lot of trade secrets in terms of how you actually implement these systems to get the incremental performance. And anytime a new AI system comes out, it's all ranked and scored based on different benchmarks and how it's doing. And so there's this definite arms race to do better on those. And what's happening underneath the hood in each of those systems is pretty highly protected, and is why you see, Facebook paying tens of millions of dollars for leading AI researchers, is because they have it all up here, and so there's this, for very high-end researchers, there's a sort of a significant war for talent, if you will. Ooh, wow. Yeah, that is a good question. Will AI ever develop an ego? You're starting to see emergent sort of personality traits. So one of the challenges with the current AI systems is a little bit the opposite of an ego. They're all sycophants. And so you will give them an idea and they'll say, that's the best idea ever. And so one of the things is that you both have to know how to ask it to not do that, but they're also trying to train that out to have it be a little bit more neutral in that regard. But the idea that it could develop what we would view as being a human personality trait would lead you to think that perhaps you could end up with a little bit of an ego. And if you get two AI, this is like all the nefarious stuff, but if you put two AI systems in competition with each other, they will act in very adverse ways, which is somewhat evident of perhaps being a little egotistical. Yeah, I don't know exactly when that happens, other than I 100% agree. It's like one of the biggest issues. So if you talk to people that are building data centers, like what are the constraints to build more data centers? It's all power. I mean, there's a little bit of land, but for the most part, it's power. And so there's a whole number of companies working on small nuclear. There's a whole number of companies working on more solar-powered, wind-powered, other renewable sources for AI systems. They require batteries because those are non sort of regular current. So there's a significant amount of investment going in. It feels like right now, it feels like the demand for power is insatiable, and so as much power as can be brought online is going to get consumed by AI, and so I think that's a constraint on the system, at least in the U.S., and that's one of the things that has people in the U.S.-China debate, if you will. I forget the exact number, but this will be round orders right. We brought in something like 50 terawatts of power, and they brought in 500, like in the last X number of years. And so their ability to bring on power in China is much greater than our ability to bring on power here. And if power is the fundamental constraint, that puts you at an economic and competitive disadvantage. And so that's something that obviously a lot of people are thinking about.
Supply chains, traditional sales is done by relationship
Yeah, yeah. No, I think there's a the generalized version of that story is you know the statement is like, is AI coming for your job? Not really, but the people who use AI are, and so that's a risk. The flip side is a whole bunch of companies working with small businesses to help them sell better through their different channels, and so you're going to arm with AI, and there is a little bit of that going on in the world, that you need to have your workforces adopting the technology. You need to be thinking about solutions, and they've gotten cheap enough. You know, we're a small business. We're 10 people, and you have to rethink your allocation of resources. It's not an IT budget anymore as much as it is. It's sort of like it's another person you're bringing on to your small business to help you be more competitive and help you sell better and help you source better and do all those kind of things. Way back. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it gets worse before hopefully it gets a lot better. That's sort of the high level on the climate's getting way worse. You know, you have to think some of the unlocks, if you believe in the capabilities of the system, some of the unlocks for direct carbon capture from there and other sort of environmental wins will come from AI. In the meantime, it's definitely a negative. There's no sugarcoating that. And so that's, I think, why you see so much interest in sort of data centers that are powered by renewables, data centers that are powered by nuclear, is because we can't do it with natural gas and coal and all these kind of things. And that's that is a big negative. Yeah, yeah, they're the. Yeah. Yeah, so there's different classes of people building AI systems. So the very high-end researchers have been their PhD level. They've been in the field for 10 to 20 years, and those are the people that are, you know, were the pioneers of the field, and those are the people that are getting paid inordinate amounts of money. Yeah, they're writing the code that's in the AI systems and developing the techniques that's in the systems. And then there's the people who use AI, and I think there is this for new software developers and experienced software developers, like leaning in to really understand the tools, because they work differently than the average software developer sits down in front of a blank screen and sort of works through what they're trying to develop. This one, you actually type to it in real English, and you ask it things, and how you develop completely changes, and so you need to be very adaptable to this new techniques. And so one of the things that I tell all of our companies, or I would tell my kids if they were software developers, is like, you need to lean into understanding how this new platform can make you more efficient and make you faster and make you better. And that's the quote unquote AI native workers are going to be the ones that are going to succeed in the workplace, and the ones that sort of close their mind or they're not interested in learning new things, that's going to be harder in the workplace. Yeah, so what is government doing in this area, and what should they be doing? The AI blueprint had a couple big things. One is trying to unlock data center builds, decreasing regulation, making that easier and faster, promoting open models, so models that are more understandable and more freely available, which I think is a good policy. But for the most part, you'd like to think the government would be involved in thinking about sort of threats and risks and safety. That was largely sort of delegated to the state level, and all the states were putting in place different regulatory frameworks, which was then, this is now being undone by the federal government, but the federal government doesn't have a sort of coherent safety story at the moment, and so that's something that you would like to think that we should be developing. There's a school of thought, though, that Europe has a very coherent safety story, and Europe is wildly lagging in AI relative to the US and China. And so this is where you have this balance of competitive intensity versus safety and risk. And so, I think the main thing you'd like our politicians to be doing is being smart and understanding the technology and understanding the potential uses and potential opportunities, but also the potential risks. Right. Yeah, no, it's a great question, and so the question is, as investors, what's incumbent upon us to think about from a risk perspective. I can punt a little bit from our perspective. The biggest risk lies at what they call the foundation models. This is OpenAI and Google and Anthropic and X.AI and DeepSeek in China and Mistral in Europe and Llama from Facebook. Those all, by the way, take billions and billions of dollars to build and train and run, and that's where most of the risk lies. And so when I worry about safety and other considerations that's there, most of our companies are, quite frankly, leveraging those things to build applications that do stuff for people. The gray lines in our world is like, how do you feel about automating jobs? Is sort of a, when I wake up in the morning, I'm not sure I necessarily get the biggest joy out of, we looked at years ago, we looked at a company that made, it was a pizza making robot. I'm like, I'm not sure I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of automating a $15 an hour pizza maker's job. And so we end up just incorporating that on are we passionate about what this company is trying to solve? Do they enable new capabilities? I'm an investor in a company that uses AI to read pathology images, and you could argue that's putting pathologists out of a job. But there's a huge shortage on a global basis in pathologists, and so if I make those pathologists 3 times more efficient, I actually can serve more people in the globe, and you feel better about that. And so we end up incorporating sort of the morality of what we're investing in on just an individual case-by-case level, and under the theory, I think that if we largely stick to that, somewhat reasonable moral compass, we're probably going to feel better about ourselves, but also hopefully make better investments. Yeah, there are tools. It's called deepfake, and you can use deepfake detectors to decide. They're all kind of a pain to use. You want them to be built into the experience, and you see that a little bit in Twitter or X, where it'll say, hey, this is actually not a fact, and so you're starting. That's an AI generated response to something. So there are some of those capabilities getting built into social media platforms, but not at the rate and speed at which the quality of the images is improving. And so right now, I think a savvy human can look at a lot of images in social media and say, that's probably AI. In 6 months, I don't think that's the case. And so that opens up. That's this misinformation issue. What do we trust? And I'm not sure we're fully ready for a world where you, we're already doing it, where you lose trust and sort of the veracity of everything. And I think that's probably, I was talking to a congressman from Massachusetts, and I was asking him about his #1 concerns in AI, and that was #1, is that we as a society lose trust in information, and so I would like to see our government doing a better job of not denigrating sources of truth, and having a framework for how do we address that. What's happening to the segment that's considered to be what? Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the question is, how do you deal with the world getting increasingly complex and increasingly technical? There's a smaller and smaller portion of people to which returns will accrue simplistically. And I think that if you're into economics, there was a great article in the recent Economist where the cover said something like the economics of superintelligence, where it's talking about like there is a portion of people that will generate and are already generating immense wealth. And that inequality gap, I think, will continue to increase in the short run. Now, at the same time, you can have a situation where inequality gap increases, but the average well-being of the average person, if you will, may actually go up because we're treating diseases, food's more plentiful, power is cheap, the air is cleaner. Like if you imagine a beautiful world. So you could have two things that happen at the same time, which would be okay. If you have one thing happen and the second thing doesn't happen, that's not a good situation, and that's where you would expect that there'd be some. This is again where the government can play a role of how do you ensure there's sufficient incentives for people to do well in the world, but not do so at the risk of sort of this super elite. I don't know how to. That's beyond my pay grade politically, but it's something we will have to, I think we're in the middle of it today. We probably have been for the last 10 years, and we'll have to continue to address politically. Right. Yeah, I think that's also possible. That's the more optimistic view for sure. And I hope that's right. This is maybe a total side tangent. I think one of the interesting negatives of AI that anyone who uses an AI system needs to be aware of, if you're using it for decision making, there's this tendency to check your brain at the door. And so if you, there was a study of taxi drivers in New York City in the 50s where they had to memorize the entire city, and their brains were like massive in the area of the brain that memorized city streets and navigation routes. They did the same study in the world of Google Maps, and that section of the brain's entirely gone. And that's probably okay for directions, like we now can get somewhere. But if you start doing that every day on every decision, that's like really bad for the human brain. And so one of the things I talk about with my team is that, yes, we can use AI to develop investment memos and research reports and insights into companies, but we need to always remember that you got to keep using your brain, and it's not perfect. It's a good sounding board. You can go back and forth. It can automate a lot of things, but if you sort of check your intelligence at the door, that is when we will make way to another species. So.